We begin in Egypt, where the COP27 climate summit has been extended another day. Organizers hope the new deadline will give negotiators time to find common ground on several thorny issues. Now, one is compensation for countries hit by climate disasters. But there could be movement on that after a surprise offer from the European Union linking financial aid to tougher emissions cuts. Vulnerable nations have already made it clear that an agreement would be impossible without funding for loss and damages.
You take, for instance, some of our countries, like I think in Dominica, there have been deaths. In Antigua, there have been deaths as a result of hurricane. So we consider this an urgent matter that should be addressed, and we will not back away from a minimum position at this COP. That a loss and damage fund be established in order to make available the necessary financial resources to pay for the recovery of our islands.
Well, I'd like to speak now to Jochen Flassbart, State Secretary in the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development. He's in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. I'd like to welcome you first to DW and thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. We know there are a worrying number of issues still left to be resolved at this summit. Perhaps biggest of all is financing. What is your position on richer nations compensating poorer countries who are suffering the effects of climate change?
I mean, it's absolutely essential for us to help those in need, those affected most by the ongoing climate change. These are usually countries that have not done a lot for this climate change, whose emissions are very, very low. And therefore, we supported those countries, the vulnerable countries, how we call them here, to get this an agenda item. But Germany also organized something practical on the ground. We launched the Global Shield against climate risk. So to have a double track, one on the negotiation side, but the other one bringing immediate help to those in need.
And so can you give us a peek behind the scenes there in Sharm el-Sheikh and tell us what is the holdup on coming to a deal on financing?
Well, the question here at the negotiations, first of all, to start it, that was done 2 weeks ago. And the other one is how to design the help. And there were several options on the table to create a fund under existing entities like the Green Climate Fund, or to do something standalone, something brand new. And the European Union, as well as many other old industrialized or donor countries were heading for looking at a number of options. But as we saw that our people, our partners in the developing world, specifically the most vulnerable, were not satisfied with looking at the whole range of options. Yesterday, Executive Vice President Timmermans announced that Europe is open to decide on a fund here in Sharm el-Sheikh already, given that all those who are part of the problem are also part of the solution. So we need to extend the so-called donor basis and involve countries like China to get the problem solved.
So we know that Europe is willing to pay for climate losses and damages in poor countries. But there are some rich nations who say they don't agree with this approach. They believe it would send money to countries that are not on the front line of climate change. Can you tell me more specifically who we are talking about here specifically?
Well, I think it's basically here now about the design of the different instruments and whether or not we get a dedicated fund and who pays into this fund. And we believe that this has to be a broad range of countries, also innovative instruments. But to be very clear and explicit, countries like China have to be part of those who are paying to those who are in need. And we also want to link this with the overall mitigation agenda, because we need to limit climate change to 1.5 degrees. Otherwise, we need more efforts for adaptation. And at the end, there is more pain in the world and more need to pay for loss and damage.
Okay, so it's about in part bringing China on side. I would also, however, like to talk about Germany's role in climate change specifically. We know that scientists working on the climate action tracker have rated Germany's policies as insufficient to meet the Paris Agreement's 1.5 Celsius temperature limit. I think poorer countries will look at that and wonder why they should do their bit. How would you respond to that?
Yeah, I know the assessments of different institutes, but I need to say Germany is still one of the very few countries who have a very clear target to be climate neutral, not only 2050, but also already 2045. It is by law. It's not just a political announcement. Yes, we are in a difficult situation at the moment due to the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine. We need to use a little bit more coal during this winter season and maybe the next one. We will need a bit more gas from other countries because we don't want to buy the gas any longer from Russia. But this doesn't mean at all that we are not following our line. On the contrary, the coal phase out will be speed up from 2035 to 2038, already to 2030. So all our friends can believe we will exhaust ourselves to be pioneers on climate change as well.
Thank you very much for that. That's Jochen Flassbart, State Secretary in the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development. Really appreciate your time.